August 7th, 1942. Guadalcanal, Solomon Islands. The jungle is alive with the hum of insects and the distant crackle of gunfire. The air is thick, heavy with the scent of mud, sweat, and cordite. In a shallow foxhole, Private First Class Chesinez wipes the grime from his brow, his hands trembling as he adjusts the battered field radio. The sun is just beginning to rise, casting long shadows through the tangled undergrowth. Around him, Marines crouch low, rifles at the ready, eyes darting toward the tree line where Japanese snipers are rumored to be waiting. Sergeant Bill Tooley, his uniform streaked with mud, leans in close. "Chester, we need that message out. Now." His voice is low, urgent. The Japanese have cut off the supply line to the beachhead, and the Marines are running low on ammunition. Every second counts. Chester glances at his partner, Private John Brown, who nods in silent encouragement. Together, they kneel over the radio, the battered handset pressed between them. Chester's heart pounds in his chest. He knows what's at stake. If the message doesn't get through, the men on the ridge will be overrun. He takes a deep breath and begins to speak, not in English, but in the rolling, musical syllables of his native Navajo. Dine Bizad. The words flow quickly, each one a code, each phrase a shield. John listens, then repeats the message back, double-checking every syllable. The code is new, untested in battle, but it is their only hope. On the other end of the line, miles away at the command post, Corporal Samuel Begay listens intently, pencil poised over a notepad. He scribbles furiously, translating the Navajo back into English. Enemy advancing from the east. Request immediate artillery support. Coordinates to follow. He hands the note to Lieutenant Colonel Robert Hall, who reads it, nods, and barks orders to the artillery battery. Within minutes, the jungle erupts in thunder. Shells scream overhead, slamming into the enemy positions. The Japanese advance falters, then breaks. The Marines on the ridge cheer, relief flooding their faces. Chester and John exchange a glance, exhausted, exhilarated, and just a little bit stunned. Their code has worked. The enemy never knew what hit them. As the sun climbs higher, the two Navajo Marines sit back in their foxhole, the radio silent for now. Around them, the jungle is still dangerous, the battle far from over. But for the first time, they feel a flicker of hope. Their language, once forbidden in government schools, has become a weapon, one the enemy cannot touch. The secret of the Navajo Code Talkers is born in the mud and fire of Guadalcanal, its power untested, its future unwritten. May 1942. Window Rock, Arizona. Navajo Nation. The morning sun rises over the red mesas, painting the land in gold and ochre. In the heart of the Navajo Nation, a battered army truck rumbles down a dusty road, its olive-drab paint faded by the desert wind. Inside, Marine recruiter Lieutenant William Cannon scans a list of names, his brow furrowed in concentration. He's come a long way, from Camp Elliott, San Diego, following a rumor, one that could change the course of the war. At the Tribal Council House, a crowd has gathered. Young men in denim and flannel, their hair cropped short, stand shoulder to shoulder with elders in turquoise and silver. The air is thick with anticipation and the scent of sage. Cannon steps forward, his boots crunching on the gravel, and addresses the assembly. "We need volunteers," he says, his voice echoing off the stone walls. Men who speak both English and Navajo, men who are willing to serve their country in a way no one else can. In the crowd, 17-year-old Carl Gorman exchanges a glance with his friend, Peter McDonald. Both have heard the stories of Pearl Harbor, of the Marines fighting on distant islands. Both feel the pull of duty, the weight of history. Carl's mother squeezes his hand, her eyes shining with pride and fear. One by one, the young men step forward. Their names are written down. Chester Nez, John Brown, Samuel Begay, Lloyd Oliver, and more. Some are barely out of high school. Others have already worked the land, herded sheep, or driven trucks for the railroad. All are fluent in the ancient tongue of their people, a language the U.S. military hopes will baffle Japanese code breakers. The next day, the recruits board the truck, waving goodbye to their families. The journey to boot camp is long and uncertain. The desert gives way to mountains, then to the endless sprawl of San Diego. At Camp Elliott, the Navajo men are issued uniforms, their hair shorn to regulation length. The drill instructors are relentless, barking orders, pushing their recruits to their limits. But the Navajo endure, their spirits unbroken. In a small, windowless classroom, the real work begins. Marine cryptographer Philip Johnston, the son of missionaries who grew up among the Navajo, stands at the blackboard. He explains the mission: to create a code based on the Navajo language, one that is fast, flexible, and utterly unbreakable. The men huddle over notepads, inventing words for military terms that have no equivalent in Navajo. Submarine becomes ironfish. Tank is turtle. Bomber is buzzard. They laugh at the creativity, but they know the stakes. Every word could mean the difference between life and death. As the weeks pass, the code takes shape. The men drill day and night, sending and receiving messages, testing each other's memory and speed. The instructors watch, impressed by the recruits' discipline and determination. By the end of training, the first group of 29 Navajo code talkers is ready. On the eve of their deployment, the men gather in the barracks, their voices low. Some pray in Navajo, others write letters home. All know they are about to enter a world of danger and uncertainty, but they also know they carry a secret weapon, one born of their heritage, forged in the fires of war. As the transport ship pulls away from the dock, the code talkers stand at the rail, watching the coastline fade into the mist. Ahead lies the unknown. Behind them, the hopes of a nation and a people right on their shoulders. November 20th, 1943. Betio Island, Tarawa Atoll. The roar of naval guns shakes the dawn, sending plumes of sand and smoke skyward. Landing craft bob in the surf, packed with grim-faced Marines, clutching rifles and packs. Among them, Private First Class Lloyd Oliver crouches low, his helmet rattling with each explosion. Salt spray stings his face as the ramp drops, and the men surge forward into waist-deep water, bullets snapping overhead. Lloyd's radio is strapped to his back, heavy and awkward. He glances at his partner, Corporal Alan Dale June, who gives a tight nod. Their orders are clear. Establish contact with battalion headquarters. The moment they hit the beach, the Japanese defenders are dug in, their machine guns raking the surf. Men fall all around, the water turning red. Lloyd and Alan scramble over the sand, ducking behind a shattered coconut log. Alan yanks the handset from his pack, his hands slick with sweat and blood. He shouts into the radio, his voice steady, despite the chaos. Turtle moving east. Buzzard circling. Ironfish silent. The words tumble out in rapid Navajo, each one a code, each one a lifeline. Miles offshore, aboard the command ship USS Maryland, Lieutenant Colonel David Shube listens to the transmission. He turns to his Navajo interpreter, Sergeant Joe Hosteen, Kelwood, who translates instantly. Tanks advancing east. Bombers overhead. Submarines not detected. Shoup nods, relays the orders to the artillery batteries, and the guns thunder in response. On the beach, the code talkers work without pause. Messages fly back and forth, requests for reinforcements, coordinates for airstrikes, warnings of enemy counterattacks. The Japanese intercept the transmissions, but the words are meaningless, a torrent of syllables they cannot decipher. Their own code breakers, so skilled at unraveling English ciphers, are helpless. The battle rages for 3 days. The code talkers move with the front lines, radios slung over their shoulders, always in the thick of the fight. They dodge sniper fire, crawl through shell craters, and huddle in foxholes as mortar rain down. Their voices, calm and precise, cut through the chaos, guiding the Marines forward. At night, Lloyd and Alan share a can of cold beans, their hands shaking from exhaustion. Around them, the beach is littered with wreckage, burned-out tanks, shattered landing craft, the bodies of friends and foes alike. Alan pulls a battered photograph from his pocket, a picture of his family back in Arizona. He stares at it for a moment, then tucks it away. "Do you think they know what we're doing?" Lloyd asks quietly. Alan shakes his head. Maybe someday. For now, we just keep talking. By the time the sun sets on the third day, the island is in American hands. The cost is staggering. Thousands dead and wounded, but the victory is decisive, and the Code Talkers' role is undeniable. Their code is held unbroken and unbreakable, a shield against the enemy's eyes and ears. As the survivors gather on the beach, the Code Talkers sit apart, their radios silent for the moment. They know the battle is just beginning. There will be other islands, other beaches, other days when their voices will carry the fate of men and nations. But tonight, beneath the shattered palms in the blood-red sky, they have proven themselves. The code works. The secret holds. February 1944. Camp Tarawa, Hawaii. The rain falls in steady sheets, drumming on the canvas roofs of the Marine encampment. Mud squelches underfoot as squads march between rows of tents, their boots caked and uniforms damp. In a makeshift classroom near the edge of camp, a group of Navajo Code Talkers huddle around a battered wooden table, their faces illuminated by the yellow glow of a single lantern. Sergeant Philip Johnston, the civilian cryptographer who first proposed the idea of a Navajo code, stands at the head of the table. He's older than the rest, his hair flecked with gray, but his eyes are sharp with purpose. Spread before him are stacks of notepads, each filled with handwritten lists, words, phrases, and the ever-growing lexicon of the code. Private First Class Samuel Sandoval leans forward, pencil in hand. "We need a word for flamethrower," he says, glancing at his fellow Code Talkers. The men trade suggestions, laughter breaking the tension. "How about fire spitter?" offers Joe Hosteen Kelwood, grinning. The group nods, and Samuel writes it down in careful script. Not any gin psychod, fire spitter. The code is alive, evolving with every battle, every new weapon and tactic. The original 211-word vocabulary has grown to over 400, each term carefully chosen for clarity and speed. The men drill constantly, reciting the code until it becomes second nature. Mistakes are not tolerated. Lives depend on precision. Outside, the camp is a world of routine and camaraderie. The Code Talkers are a tight-knit group, bound by language and shared experience. They play cards in the evenings, swap stories of home, and teach their fellow Marines a few words of Navajo. Some of the white Marines are curious, others wary, but all respect the Code Talkers' skill and bravery. Corporal Chesternas sits on his cot, cleaning his rifle. He glances at the photograph of his family tucked into his helmet liner. The war has taken him far from the mesas and canyons of New Mexico, but the sound of his language, spoken in the mess tent, on the radio, in the heat of battle, grounds him. It is a piece of home, a reminder of who he is and why he fights. Training is relentless. The men run obstacle courses, practice amphibious landings, and learn to operate new radio equipment. They are expected to keep up with the best, and they do. Their instructors push them hard, but the Code Talkers push each other harder. Pride and responsibility drive them forward. One evening, as the rain finally lets up, the men gather around a small fire. Sergeant Johnston joins them, his face serious. "You've done something no one else could do," he says quietly. "You've built a code the enemy can't break. But remember, this is just the beginning. The next campaign will be harder. The Japanese are desperate. They'll do anything to win." The men nod, understanding the weight of his words. They know the enemy is listening, always searching for a weakness. But they also know their code is strong, their brotherhood stronger. As the fire burns low, the Code Talkers sit in silence, each man lost in thought. The war is far from over, but they are ready. Their voices, their language, their code, these are their weapons, and they will not fail. June 15th, 1944. Saipan, Mariana Islands. The pre-dawn darkness is shattered by the thunder of naval bombardment. The sky flickers with a flash of explosions as shells rain down on the beaches. In the cramped hold of an LVT amphibious tractor, Corporal Peter McDonald checks his radio set, his fingers trembling with anticipation. Around him, Marines steel themselves for the assault, faces painted with grime and fear. The ramp drops, and the men surge into the surf, bullets hissing past like angry hornets. Peter and his partner, Private First Class Kiyotsussidi. Push forward. Water up to their waists. Radios held high. The sand is a killing ground. Machine gun nests hidden in the dunes. Mortar bursting overhead. The air is thick with smoke and the cries of the wounded. Peter dives behind a shattered tank, yanking the handset from his pack. Enemy tanks approaching from the north. Request air support. Coordinates to follow. His words flow in Navajo, rapid and precise. Key listens, then repeats the message, double-checking every syllable before transmitting. The code is their shield, their lifeline. On a command ship offshore, Lieutenant Colonel Howard Rice listens as the message crackles through the static. He turns to his Navajo interpreter, Sergeant Roy Begay, who translates instantly. Orders are relayed, and within minutes, Corsair fighters roar overhead, unleashing rockets on the enemy armor. The battle for Saipan is chaos. The Japanese defenders fight with fanatical determination, launching bonsai charges and counterattacks day and night. The code talkers are everywhere, on the front lines, in command posts, crawling through shattered sugarcane fields with radios slung over their shoulders. They send and receive hundreds of messages, each one vital, each one a target for enemy snipers. At dusk, Peter and Key huddle in a foxhole, their uniforms soaked with sweat and blood. The radio crackles with urgent requests. Ammunition, reinforcements, medical evacuation. The code talkers work in shifts, their voices hoarse but steady. They know the enemy is listening, desperate to break the code, but the words remain a mystery. One night, a Japanese patrol slips through the lines, attacking a command post. Peter and Key are caught in the crossfire, bullets tearing through the darkness. Key is hit, a grazing wound to his arm. Peter drags him to cover, pressing a bandage to the wound. "You all right?" he asks, his voice tight. Key grins through the pain. "Just a scratch. Let's get back to work." The days blur together, assaults, counterattacks, endless transmissions. The code talkers become legends among the Marines, their speed and accuracy saving countless lives. Officers marvel at their ability to send complex messages in seconds. Messages that would take other cryptographers half an hour to encode and decode. By July, Saipan is in American hands. The cost is staggering. Thousands dead. The island a landscape of ruin. But the victory is decisive, a turning point in the Pacific War. The code talker's role is undeniable. Their code has held, unbroken and unbreakable, a shield against the enemy's eyes and ears. As the survivors gather on the battered beach, Peter and Key sit side by side, their radios silent for now. They know the battle is just beginning. There will be other islands, other days when their voices will carry the fate of men and nations. But tonight, beneath the shattered palms and the blood-red sky, they have proven themselves once again. The code works. The secret holds. April 1st, 1945. Okinawa, Ryukyu Islands. The morning fog clings to the hills as the largest amphibious assault of the Pacific War begins. Waves of landing craft surge toward the beaches, their engines roaring, the decks crowded with Marines bracing for the unknown. Among them, Sergeant Joe Hosteen Kelwood checks his -300 Seychelles rupees radio, the familiar weight of the handset a comfort amid the chaos. His partner, Private First Class Samuel Sandoval, tightens the straps on his pack, eyes scanning the horizon for the first sign of enemy fire. The ramp slams down, and the men charge ashore, boots sinking into the wet sand. Mortar shells burst overhead, showering the beach with shrapnel. The air is thick with the stench of cordite and burning oil. Joe and Samuel sprint for a cover behind a wrecked landing craft, their radios already crackling with urgent calls. Enemy artillery on the ridge. Request counter-battery fire. Coordinates to follow. Joe's voice is calm, the Navajo words tumbling out in a practiced rhythm. Samuel repeats the message, his hands steady despite the chaos. The code flows between them, a lifeline in the storm. Behind the lines, at the division command post, Lieutenant Colonel Robert Hall listens as the message comes through. He turns to his Navajo interpreter, Corporal Chester Nez, who translates instantly. Orders are relayed, and within minutes, American guns answer, pounding the enemy positions. The battle for Okinawa is a nightmare. The Japanese defenders are dug in deep, their resistance fanatical. Kamikaze attacks scream down from the sky, slamming into ships offshore. The code talkers move with the front lines, radios slung over their shoulders, always in the thick of the fight. They crawl through mud and shattered villages, dodging sniper fire and artillery barrages. At night, the men huddle in rain-soaked foxholes, their uniforms stiff with mud and sweat. The radio is never silent. Requests for ammunition, reports of enemy movements, calls for medics. The code talkers work in shifts, their voices hoarse but unwavering. They know the enemy is listening, desperate to break the code, but the words remain a mystery. One evening, as the sun sets behind the smoking hills, Joe and Samuel share a can of cold beans, their hands shaking from exhaustion. Around them, the camp is a world of shadows and whispered prayers. Joe pulls a small pouch from his pocket, filled with corn pollen from home. He sprinkles a pinch on the ground, murmuring a blessing in Navajo. "Do you think they'll ever know what we did?" Samuel asks, quietly. Joe shrugs, a tired smile on his lips. Maybe not. But we know that's enough. The days blur together. Assaults, counterattacks, endless transmissions. The code talkers become legends among the Marines, their speed and accuracy saving countless lives. Officers marvel at their ability to send complex messages in seconds, messages that would take other cryptographers half an hour to encode and decode. By June, Okinawa is in American hands. The cost is staggering. Tens of thousands dead. The island, a landscape of ruin. But the victory is decisive, the final stepping stone to Japan itself. The code talkers' role is undeniable. Their code is held unbroken and unbreakable, a shield against the enemy's eyes and ears. As the survivors gather on the battered beach, Joe and Samuel sit side by side, their radios silent for now. They know the war's almost over. There will be other battles, other days when their voices will carry the fate of men and nations. But tonight, beneath the shattered palms and the blood-red sky, they have proven themselves once again. The code works. The secret holds. May 1945. Imperial Japanese Army Intelligence Headquarters, Tokyo. The room is dim, lit only by the glow of desk lamps and the blue haze of cigarette smoke. Stacks of intercepted Allied radio transmissions cover every surface, the air thick with tension and frustration. Captain Hiroshi Sato, a veteran codebreaker, sits hunched over a battered shortwave receiver, headphones pressed to his ears. He listens intently as another burst of rapid, unfamiliar syllables crackles through the static. He scribbles furiously in his notebook, trying to capture the strange sounds. "It's not English," he mutters, glancing at his superior, Colonel Masaru Tanaka. "It's not any language I've ever heard." Tanaka frowns, his uniform immaculate, his eyes cold and calculating. "Play it again," he orders. The recording is replayed, words tumbling in a rhythm that defies analysis. Sato consults his team, linguists, cryptographers, and radio operators, all experts in Allied ciphers. They pore over the transcripts, comparing them to every known code, every dialect, every language catalogued by the Empire. Nothing. Matches. In a corner, Lieutenant Kenji Nakamura, a linguist who studied in California before the war, shakes his head. "It's not a code in the traditional sense. It's a language, one I don't recognize. The structure is too complex, too fluid. It's not Chinese, not Korean, not any Pacific Island tongue." The team grows desperate. They try frequency analysis, searching for patterns. They attempt to isolate repeated words, hoping to match them to common military terms. But the messages are too short, too varied, the vocabulary too vast. The only thing they know for certain is that these transmissions always precede Allied attacks. Artillery barrages, airstrikes, amphibious landings. The code is a harbinger of disaster. Colonel Tanaka slams his fist on the table. "Find the source. If we can't break the code, we must silence the men who use it." Orders are sent to the front lines. Capture Allied radio operators alive, at any cost. Japanese patrols are instructed to target men with radios, to search for clues among the dead and wounded. On Saipan, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa, Japanese soldiers risked their lives to infiltrate American lines, hoping to seize a code talker. But the Navajo Marines are always on the move, their radios guarded by squads of riflemen. When a code talker is killed or wounded, his equipment is destroyed, his body protected by his comrades. Bike in Tokyo, Captain Sato listens to another transmission. Frustration etched on his face. "It's like trying to catch smoke with your hands," he says quietly. They speak in riddles, in a language that changes with every message. We are blind. The Japanese never break the code. Their best minds, their most advanced machines, are defeated by the ancient words of a people they never knew existed. The frustration grows, but so does the respect. In the end, the enemy can only listen and wonder. July 1945. Aboard the USS El Dorado, off the coast of Iwo Jima. The sea is calm, a glassy expanse reflecting the pale morning sky. On the deck of the command ship, a group of Navajo code talkers gather, their uniforms faded and boots scuffed from months of hard campaigning. The air is thick with the scent of salt and diesel. The distant rumble of artillery, a constant reminder that the battle for Iwo Jima is far from over. Corporal Lloyd Oliver sits cross-legged, his back against a steel bulkhead, carefully cleaning his radio set. Beside him, Private First Class John Brown sharpens his bayonet, the rhythmic scrape of metal on stone, a steady counterpoint to the chaos below. The two men speak quietly in Navajo, their words a comfort, a link to home and family. Below deck, the mess hall is crowded with Marines, some laughing, some lost in thought, all exhausted. The code talkers are a tight-knit group, their bond forged in the crucible of war. They share stories of home, teach their fellow Marines a few words of Navajo, and trade letters from loved ones. The laughter is genuine, but the shadows linger. Each man knows that tomorrow could bring another assault. Another friend lost. On the black sand beaches of Iwo Jima, the fighting is relentless. The code talkers move with the front lines, radios slung over their shoulders, always within earshot of the officers who depend on their speed and accuracy. They crawl through volcanic ash, dodging sniper fire and mortar shells, their voices calm and steady as they transmit messages in the code only they understand. One afternoon, as the sun beats down on the shattered landscape, Lloyd and John are pinned behind a wrecked Sherman tank. Bullets snap overhead, and the radio crackles with urgent calls for reinforcements. Lloyd keys the handset, his voice unwavering. Enemy advancing from the west, request immediate artillery support. The message is relayed in Navajo, the code flowing effortlessly between the two men. A shell explodes nearby, showering them with debris. John is hit, a jagged piece of shrapnel tearing through his sleeve. Blood seeps through the fabric, but he grits his teeth and keeps working, his hands moving with practiced precision. Lloyd tears a strip from his own shirt, binding the wound as best he can. "Hang on, brother," he murmurs. "We're almost through." That night, in a makeshift aid station, John lies on a stretcher, his arm bandaged and his eyes heavy with fatigue. Lloyd sits beside him, radio in his lap, listening to the distant sounds of battle. The two men share a can of peaches, the sweet syrup, a rare treat. They talk of home, the red mesas of Arizona, the cool nights on the reservation, the voices of their families carried on the wind. For the code talkers, the war is more than a series of battles. It is a test of endurance, of loyalty, of brotherhood. They fight not only for victory, but for each other, for the men who stand beside them, for the families waiting across the ocean, for the honor of their people. As the stars wheel overhead and the guns fall silent for a brief moment, Lloyd and John close their eyes, finding peace in the knowledge that their code, their language, has saved lives. Tomorrow, the fight will begin again, but tonight, they are together. Brothers in arms, guardians of a secret that has changed the course of history. August 15th, 1945. Guam, Mariana Islands. The humid air is electric with anticipation. News crackles over the radio. Japan has surrendered. The war is over. On the sprawling airfield, Marines gather in clusters, some cheering, some weeping, others simply staring at the sky in disbelief. The code talkers stand among them, uniforms stained with sweat and dust, radios slung over their shoulders, faces unreadable. Sergeant Chesternez stands at the edge of the crowd, his hands trembling as he listens to the announcement. Around him, the other Navajo Marines exchange glances, relief, exhaustion, and something else. Uncertainty. For years, their voices have carried the weight of battle, their language a shield for thousands. Now, in the sudden quiet, they are left with memories and the burden of a secret. That night, the code talkers gather in a dimly lit tent, the air thick with cigarette smoke and the low murmur of voices. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Hall enters, his face grave but proud. He looks each man in the eye before speaking. You have done something extraordinary. You have saved lives, won battles, and helped bring this war to an end. But your work is not finished. The code must remain secret. You cannot speak of it, not to your families, not to your friends, not to anyone. The words hang heavy in the air. Some men nod, others look away. The order is clear, and the reason is understood. The world is still dangerous, the future uncertain. The code may be needed again. In the days that follow, the code talkers help process surrendering Japanese soldiers. Their radios now silent. They pack their gear, say goodbye to the men they have fought beside, and board ships for home. The journey is long and quiet, the ocean stretching endlessly beneath a sky filled with stars. Back in the United States, the code talkers return to a world that knows nothing of their heroism. They are greeted as Marines, but not as the saviors they truly are. Some find work on the reservation, others in cities far from home. They carry the secret with them, a silent burden that shapes their lives. Chesternez sits on his porch in New Mexico, the desert wind whispering through the sage. He watches the sun set over the mesas, the colors fading to twilight. In his hands, he holds a letter from a fellow code talker, a simple note written in Navajo, a reminder of the bond they share. The war is over, but the story of the code talkers is not. Their voices, once the key to victory, are now silent. Their secret, unbroken. Autumn 1945, Navajo Nation, Arizona, and New Mexico. The train rattles through the high desert, its whistle echoing across the mesas. Inside, Private First Class Samuel Sandoval sits by the window, his duffel bag at his feet, watching the familiar landscape roll by. The war feels both distant and impossibly close. Every clack of the rails a reminder of the radio's static. Every flash of sunlight on the tracks a memory of gunfire on distant islands. At the station in Gallup, families gather, waving flags and holding homemade signs. Mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters. Children who have grown taller in the years since their sons left. Samuel steps off the train, his uniform pressed, his face older than his years. His mother embraces him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Welcome home, my son," she whispers in Navajo. The homecoming is bittersweet. The code talkers are welcomed as returning warriors, but the true nature of their service remains hidden. They cannot speak of the code, the battles fought with words as much as bullets. At community gatherings, elders ask questions, but the men only smile and nod, their silence a shield. Some struggle to adjust. Nightmares haunt their sleep. Memories of Saipan, Iwo Jima, Okinawa. The sound of thunder brings them back to the beaches, the smell of burning wood to the jungles of the Pacific. They find solace in the land and the rituals of their people. Sweat lodges, healing songs, the quiet work of tending sheep and fields. Others seek new paths. Carl Gorman enrolls in art school, painting the stories he cannot tell. Peter MacDonald studies engineering, determined to build a better future for his people. Chesternez works as a carpenter, his hands steady, his eyes always searching the horizon. The bond between the code talkers endures. They write letters in Navajo, visit each other when they can gather for ceremonies and feasts. In the quiet moments, they share memories of laughter in the barracks, of fear and courage on the battlefield, of the code that saved so many lives. One evening, Samuel sits with his grandfather by the fire, the stars bright overhead. The old man listens as Samuel hums a song from the war, a tune only the code talkers know. "You have seen much," his grandfather says softly. "You have carried a great burden, but you have honored our people." Samuel nods. the weight of silence heavy but bearable. He knows the world may never understand what he and his brothers did, but he also knows that, in the language of his ancestors, he found strength, purpose, and pride. The war is over, but the story of the Navajo code talkers lives on, in the land, in the language, in the hearts of those who remember. September 17th, 1968. Washington, D.C., the city hums with the energy of a new era. Cars honking, crowds bustling, the Capitol dome gleaming in the afternoon sun. In a quiet government office, a stack of classified files is unlocked for the first time in decades. The story of the Navajo code talkers, long hidden behind the veil of secrecy, is about to come to light. Chester Nez, now in his 40s, stands in a crowded hallway outside a congressional hearing room. He wears a suit and tie, his hair streaked with gray, his eyes sharp and watchful. Around him, other former code talkers gather: Carl Gorman, Peter MacDonald, Samuel Sandoval, and more. They greet each other with quiet words in Navajo, their bond as strong as ever. Inside, the hearing room is filled with reporters, military officials, and members of Congress. At the front, a Marine general stands to address the assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, today we honor a group of men whose service was vital to our victory in the Pacific. For too long, their story has been kept secret. Today, we tell the world. Chester is called to the stand. Flashbulbs pop as he takes his seat, the weight of history settling on his shoulders. He speaks softly, but his words carry across the room. He describes the training, the battles, the code that no enemy could break. He tells of the pride and pain, the brotherhood and the burden of silence. As he finishes, the room rises in a standing ovation. Tears glistened in the eyes of old Marines, and even the most hardened politicians are moved. The code talkers are presented with medals, their names entered into the congressional record. For the first time, the world hears their story. Back home, the news spreads quickly. On the Navajo Nation, families gather around radios and televisions, listening as the voices of their sons and fathers are finally recognized. Elders weep with pride. Children listen in awe. The language that was once forbidden in government schools is now celebrated as a weapon of victory. In the years that follow, the code talkers are honored at parades, schools, and memorials. Their story is taught in classrooms. Their faces appear on stamps and in history books. But for the men themselves, the greatest honor is the knowledge that their language, their culture, and their courage helped save countless lives. One evening, Chester Nez sits on his porch. The desert wind cooled against his face. He listens to the laughter of his grandchildren, the sound of Navajo words drifting through the air. He smiles, knowing that the secret he once carried in silence is now a legacy for generations to come. Present day, Window Rock, Arizona. The morning sun rises over the red cliffs, casting long shadows across the land. In the heart of the Navajo Nation, a new generation gathers at the Code Talkers Memorial. The bronze statues stand tall, faces etched with determination, radios slung over their shoulders. School children in bright shirts and turquoise jewelry listen as their teacher recounts the story of the men who used their language to help win a world war. Among the crowd, Peter MacDonald, now an elder, his hair white, his back straight, stands with his grandchildren. He watches as a young boy steps forward, reciting the Navajo alphabet code A, Wolachi, Be, Shush, Se, Moazi. The words roll off his tongue, proud and clear. The crowd applauds, and Peter feels a swell of pride. The language that once saved lives is alive and strong. Nearby, a group of veterans in dress uniforms salute the memorial. Some are Navajo, others Hopi, Apache, and Pueblo, brothers in arms, united by service. They share stories of the old days, of battles fought and friends lost, of the code that no enemy could break. Their laughter rings out, mingling with the voices of children and the song of the wind. In classrooms across the reservation, teachers use the story of the Code Talkers to inspire. They teach not just the history, but the values, courage, loyalty, ingenuity, and the importance of preserving language and culture. Students learn that their words have power, that their heritage is a source of strength. At the Navajo Nation Museum, visitors study artifacts from the war: radios, uniforms, Battered notebooks filled with code words. A video plays on a loop, showing interviews with surviving code talkers. Their voices are steady, their eyes bright with memory. "We did what we had to do," one says. "We did it for our people, and for all Americans." The legacy of the code talkers reaches far beyond the Navajo Nation. Their story is told in films, books, and documentaries. The U.S. military studies their code as a model of unbreakable communication. Linguists marvel at the complexity and beauty of the Navajo language. Across the world, people honor the men who turned their mother tongue into a weapon of victory. On a quiet evening, Peter McDonald sits with his family, the fire crackling in the hearth. He tells his grandchildren about the war, about the code, about the friends he made, and the challenges he faced. He speaks in Navajo, his words weaving a tapestry of memory and hope. As the stars appear over the mesas, Peter looks to the future. He knows that the story of the code talkers will never be forgotten. Their courage, their sacrifice, and their language live on in the hearts of their people. In the history of a nation, and in the voices of every child who learns to speak the words that once changed the world. End.